Alright guys, I'm going to share today a comment that I got, and I believe this comment is representative of many people out there, and it's important that we understand what is happening in Canada. So I believe, based on a lot of comments I've seen on videos and a lot of the political environment, that Canada is headed for some kind of a civil war very soon. And I'm going to read you the comment, and then I'm going to go over it so that we can understand it all together and see where where we're headed. And you can let me know how fast you think we're going to get to civil war state. But anyways, here goes. This guy, his name is Sunny P. I don't know who he is. I've never talked to him before this, but here we go. This is what he said, and it was a comment on the previous video I did where I was exposing that the people in Quebec were called racists for putting on a show that mocked Justin Trudeau, because we all learned in that video that it was okay to dress up as an Indian and go to India because according to Indians, this is what I'm told, that is considered to be cultural appreciation. But if Quebecers make fun of Trudeau for dressing like an Indian, that's racist and it's called cultural appropriation. So that's a recap of my last video, and I'm gonna link it at the end of this video, so if you haven't watched it, you can go and enjoy the show. So this is what Sunny P says to me. The thing is, you won't understand as Quebec doesn't have a culture. From what I understand, Hindus revere the cow as a god, and the turban holds a significant cultural status. You have your viewpoints and others have theirs. No need to mock people's sentiments. Oh, just by the way, guys, I wasn't mocking people's sentiments. I was mocking people's statements. There's a big difference there. Viewing the dip, you could tell that, I'm guessing he said, sorry, viewing the clip, you could tell its intention was not fun and games. However, after sharing this with one of my Indian friends and understanding how offensive this clip was, explains the backlash. It's a shame you can't get that through your head. Now, see, Sunny, there's a lot of stuff I can't get through my head, like female genital mutilation, I can't understand that one. And any kind of very brutal cultural practice that takes away somebody's freedom, I can't. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of stuff I cannot get through my thick head. But one thing I'm interested in understanding here is the friend that you talked to. Was this friend in India, and is he Hindu? Because if he's not in Quebec, Quebec is not a Hindu state. This is what I'm trying to make people understand. So anyways, let's just go with this today. We're going to assume that Sunny P is right and Quebec has no culture, right? So, Quebecers, sorry to say this to you guys, you thought you had a culture, but Sunny P is here, he's lecturing you that you have no culture. So, shut up and accept it, no culture. Let's assume that's correct. According to this logic, Quebecers, first of all, need to shut up and not say anything about anything, really, because if you say anything at all, you're going to offend some culture, and because you have no culture, well, whatever culture is out there will trump your no culture. So shut the frick up. And see there, I didn't swear. The only question that's left after that for Quebecers, it becomes, well, what should a Quebecer do when different cultures are there coming to Quebec and they're conflicting cultures? So let me give you an example. Let's take the Islamic culture. So they will eat some meat, so they'll eat, except pork, they will eat cows, right? So they'll slaughter them and they'll eat them, and as long as it's a halal slaughter, the Muslims are fine with that. Now, pin that up against Hindus who are here too in Quebec, and where does the Quebecer stand on that, right? If he accepts the halal slaughter, he's offending the Hindus, and if he doesn't want to kill the cow because the cow is a god, then he's offending the Muslims. So it's almost like Quebecers, according to this statement lecturing by some random guy claims they have no culture. It's like they've become like NPCs, non-player character or non-playable characters in gaming world. These are the characters that often just roam around and you can't control them. The computer is going to be controlling them. So it's almost like Quebecers are told by Sunny, you just roam around Quebec and we're going to program you to do things, but you're not allowed to make up your own mind because all the other cultures are going to tell you what to do, right? But what is this Quebecer supposed to do? Does he eat the beef or does he not eat the beef, right? Now, I'll give you another example. from this multicultural utopia that Quebecers are expected to not, you know, not do anything in. What if you have Hindus coming from certain parts of India where they still practice a sati? So sati, if you haven't come across what that is, I recommend you Google it, but I'm going to give you a brief description. It is essentially the practice of burning a widow alive after her husband passes away. So the guy dies, but they're going to burn alive the woman. What do you do when that culture shows up in Quebec? And then you have Chinese culture who shows up in Quebec, and the Chinese, well, they don't kill their widows. So if the Quebecer starts killing their widows, well, they're going to offend the Chinese. If they don't kill their widows, they're going to offend this sect of Hinduism that still practices this today. So what is a Quebecer to do, right? So you can see how this is so ridiculous in itself, to say that Quebecers have no culture. Quebecers do have a culture. It's just not as old as some of the other cultures, but they clearly have a distinct Quebec culture, and it's probably the most distinct culture in Canada. I mean, you can argue with me. There's very big culture in Nova Scotia as well. The BC has a distinct culture over there. They're all hippies, so they were all the ones that are pushing through for the weed laws, right? And we make fun of BC all the time for being the people who smoke all the weed. So you know what? Everybody in Canada has our Canadian culture is essentially the value of freedom, equality under the law. And then within Canada, because it's such a vast territory, each little area has kind of built these little communities that are all adhering to this main idea of Canada, but have their little differences depending on the region. So to say that Quebec does not have a culture and to say that Canada does not have a culture is utter nonsense. And that's just like Marxist bullshit. They're trying to push that to you so that you believe it, so that you acquiesce to every other culture that walks into your country. It's part of the brainwashing social program that we have to say we're not going to allow our culture to do anything, but we're going to allow every other culture coming in to be predominant and to have their say, and we're going to drown out our say while we're doing that. This is part of the programming, and it comes straight from the government. This is why we're seeing all this. But now people like Sunny and people like Ina and Maha, whatever her name was from the Facebook post from the last video I did, they're all coming here and lecturing us on how to behave. So this is a product of the liberal left. This is a product of what happens when you drown out your own culture in favor of literally anything else that walks into your country. So this is why in the past, until the last 40 years, we didn't really have many problems. Immigration used to be where people would come into Canada in slow numbers so we could actually integrate them. They would have to learn the language. They would have to show that they had money or that they had the intent to start a business here and bring something to the country. And then once they're here, they would adopt the host values. So if you came from India and you practiced sati and you came to Quebec, you would stop practicing sati because there would be a law in Quebec saying you are not allowed to kill your widow if the husband dies. This is how it works. Everybody agrees in Quebec that that's the wrong thing to do. So you would come here from India and you would agree to learn English. You would agree to learn the culture and the business, and then you'd be with the Quebecers eating pork, going to the sugar shack, and taking a sleigh down the mountain hill with all the other Quebec children every time it's February and there's a huge snow dump. That's what you would do. This is just what you do in Canada and in Quebec. So you come here from any other country and that's what you would do. And this immigration system worked. People wanted to come to Canada and they wanted to build a life here. But in the last 40 years, a lot of people are coming for the social benefits now, so they're no longer interested. And again, hashtag not all immigrants. Jesus Christ, every time I say something, there's always a whole bunch of people in the peanut gallery who are saying, oh, no, you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have said that, it's not all. No, not all immigrants. Like I said in another video, most of my friends are immigrant. Like 90% of my friends are immigrants. But they're the kind of immigrants who came here and assimilated. So if we don't assimilate, we end up with people like Sunny who lecture me about how Quebec doesn't have a culture and how Quebec is expected to adhere and respect all cultures of the world because somebody might come from that culture and you cannot be offended. So we're not allowed to say anything. We cannot disagree with it. We have to shut up and just take it. Non-PCs, like not non-playable characters, right? This is what Quebecers are rendered to. And you know what? Quebecers aren't that, and they're going to have to rise up, and I think they are starting to, and I think the rest of Canada is waking up. But this kind of comment, Sunny, you're more than welcome to write this on my comment section, because I am for free speech for all of it. I will never be upset that somebody wrote something, because I agree with your right to write that. But in return, you have to understand that as a free person in a free country, I am also going to say my piece. And there's nobody here that's going to say to me that their culture is more important than my freedom of speech. So there we go. That's it, guys. I'm tuning out, and I will see you in the next one.